Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into true crime cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of true crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell.
And I'm Megan.
And welcome to continuation of Shocktober. And I have something very shocking for you. Oh, we're shocking the audience. Ooh, rattling the bones.
Them bones.
The raccoon bones. If you don't
raccoon
listen to the
dicks.
previous episode, thank you, Brandy, for our little raccoon penis bones. And then we have our little kangaroo scrotum sack full of little crystal penises that we shake for good luck.
We're getting
We're off to a good start.
We're getting a little charmy.
Penisy?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of dicks and a lot of charms here.
I'm
that
waiting
we're
for-
stroking way too many things for luck at this point.
I know. I'm waiting for the review that says these women are obsessed with dicks.
Yes.
It's going to happen at some point in time.
We
That's
all
all
are.
right. That's all right.
Anybody who tells you different doesn't like dicks. I don't know what to say there.
Right.
Yep, that's the morning. We're drinking mimosas. And it's afternoon now. We just started in the morning.
Yep. We're doing our second recording for today, so we're a little mimosa'd up, but it's perfect timing because your case was serious that you did this week. You did a wonderful job presenting your first
Thank
case.
you.
It was amazing. People are going to love it. And now I have something a little fun for us. Not as fun as Screaming Like a Banshee,
Okay.
but there's no murder, but it is still a shocking abduction case. And I think it'll be a good transition to our afternoon here of recording. So this is the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill.
Betty and Barney?
Betty and Barney. Isn't that precious?
They're giving me Flintstone vibes.
They are so precious. They lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Now, Barney was born in 1922, and Betty, who was actually born Barrett, it was her previous last name, was born
It's a lot of bees.
It was a lot of bees. Was born in 1919. Okay. You will love this. So Barney was a United States Postal Service worker, and Betty was a CPS social worker.
Ooh.
Mhm.
All right.
Yep. They were active in their...
She's in the game.
She is. She's in the game. She's seen it all. And she's about to see more. So these two were active in the Unitarian congregation at their church. They were also members of the NAACP and community leaders. And Barney sat on a local board of the United States Commission on Civil Rights.
Oh, wow.
Because Barney and Betty were an interracial couple at a time that it was not well accepted in the United States. Barney was black, Betty was white, and this case takes place in the 1960s.
Okay.
So Barney actually worked the night shift at the post office, and he would have to drive 60 miles just one way to get to his job. Of course, Betty, working with child welfare cases, was not any easier than Barney's job for sure. So they didn't have a ton of free time together. And what free time that they did have, they would devote to their church or their activities related to the civil rights movement of the time. So they decided after they had been married for 16 months, they were going to go on a road trip, a very well-earned little honeymoon, because they actually did not take one for their when they got married.
Oh, well, after 16 months, you still like each other enough to want to go away that long.
Yes!
So that's adorable.
Isn't it? But this was a spontaneous trip. They went through Montreal and Niagara Falls for this little honeymoon, and they had left so impulsively that they didn't even stop at the bank before the bank closed for the weekend. They got in their car with the less than $70 cash in their pockets.
They packed a suitcase, they grabbed what cash they had and said, baby, let's get out of here.
Let's go for the weekend.
So romantic.
I agree. You know, they had just a quick weekend getaway. Now, on the last night of their 3-day trip, they were sipping coffee in a Vermont diner to recharge before their drive back. Barney had kind of figured that as long as they drove all the way through, they were going to beat the rains and winds. There was an approaching hurricane. Okay.
In Vermont?
On the East Coast.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Coming on the East Coast. And so they were expected to get some of that.
They didn't want to get into the rain.
Through it. Mm-hmm. So he's like, if we just push through, we're going to be good. They leave the diner around 10 p.m. thinking that they would reach their Portsmouth, New Hampshire house between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. at the very latest. This was September 19th, 1961, about 10:30 p.m., so they were only about 30 miles away from their little diner. Their lives would change forever as they drove down the empty, winding. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a stuffiness going on.
Drink some more mimosa. It's got orange juice in it.
Yes,
good for you.
vitamin C.
Sometimes you just need orange juice.
So they're driving down the empty, winding country road in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Now, they had not seen a car for miles, and then all of a sudden, they saw a light, a strange kind of light that seems to be following them a little bit.
It's a bad horror movie.
It is kind of set up in the beginning like a horror movie.
That's what it's feeling like.
So, of course, at first, they're looking at it, and Betty's like, you know what? That actually almost looks like it could be a falling star. Okay? But the light is kind of moving upwards. Then all of a sudden, it's moving erratically, and then it's getting bigger and brighter, and Betty is kind of getting panicked and is asking Barney to stop the car for a closer look.
This is behind them?
This is behind them.
Like they're seeing it in the rear view.
Yes, and she's physically turned around looking out her window. Like,
I can see it now. Can you? You'd be like, Matt, pull the fuck over. Pull the fuck over, Matt.
I would be panicking. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you weren't laying on the ground because you're tiny and you could fit down there in between the seat and the dashboard.
And I'm just like, you're on your own, pal.
Drive careful.
They also had their dog Delcy with them. Aww. And so for Betty, she's like, if you just pull over, we can get a better look at this thing or let it pass us, whatever. And Delcy can go to the bathroom. So Barney stops at a scenic picnic area just south of Twin Mountain.
Did you say, is it daytime?
It's not. It's 10:30
You said 10:30 at night. So it is dark.
It is. Yep. Now, Barney is actually an avid plane watcher and a World War II vet.
Oh.
So he is like, Betty, you got to chill the fuck out, man, because there's nothing to worry about. It's either just a satellite or it's something like a satellite that went off course, or it's possibly a helicopter, something of that sort. Yeah. Yep. But Betty is not convinced. She's like, and at this point in time, as they keep going, this light kind of seemed to move with their car. It zigged, it zagged. It was ducking past the moon, behind the trees, mountain ridges, and then it would reappear moments later. Sometimes it almost seemed like this illusion where it was like a game of cat and mouse where it was moving with them. Betty had grabbed Barney's binoculars at this point in time, and so she is looking, she's kind of hanging out of the passenger's side, like before Barney pulls over on this scenic route, still trying to tell him, like, through her binoculars, this is what it's looking like. It's looking like an odd-shaped, like, craft, almost. So
a UFO. I
want you to pull over. So she does, but she describes these as multicolored lights. They travel across the face of the moon. Now, interesting that you say UFO, because Betty had heard from her sister years earlier. Betty's sister had sworn that she saw a flying saucer.
This is that area. Time frame.
Mm-hmm. Sure is. And so Betty's
Are you giving me an alien kidnapping case, Charnell?
Didn't take you long to put it together. Well, I told you it was the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill.
I'm a smart lady sometimes. Fuck me.
I can't wait for you to figure it out.
I'm like, well, good God, woman. Give me the aliens.
I'm going to do it.
It's Shocktober, and I was shocked.
I know. It was perfect.
All right. Keep shocking me, baby.
It's a good one.
Okay, I'm listening.
Don't shut off the podcast. If you guys are like, I don't believe in this stuff, that's fine. But if you guys hear these details.
You're right there with me. We can all hold hands together and see what she's going to slap in our faces.
It's better than 6 tiny dicks, I'll tell you.
Okay.
So Betty's thinking at this point in time, oh my God, are we observing this? Barney grabs the binoculars and is like, dude, this is not, no, it's a commercial airline traveling towards Vermont on its way to Montreal. That is what this is. However, then as he's looking through those binoculars, he's like, you know what? The craft is rapidly descending towards our direction. And he realizes this object is not a plane. Like it's not moving like a plane. It can't be a plane. Now, remember, he's an avid plane watcher and a World War II vet. So he knows how planes move in the air. So they quickly return to the car and drive towards Franconia Notch, which is a narrow mountainous stretch of the road. Now, Barney, this is what Betty says. Barney, if you think it's a satellite or a star, you're being completely ridiculous. That's a quote from her. And this is the thing, though. Barney had an IQ of 140.
Okay. He's a smart feller.
Yes, he is. And there are books on this case. I want to cite them. The links are in our show notes, of course. But John G. Fuller wrote a book in 1966 called The Interrupted Journey. And so he talks about how brilliant Barney really is and not a guy to just have loose senses, essentially. Then the Hill's niece also wrote a book called Captured, The Betty and Bill Hill Experience. And her name is Kathleen Marden. So she wrote a book as well on this. So
they're letting us know that we aren't dealing with simple-minded folk.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly why I think that they both had put
and
that
I
in
hope
their
that
books.
Someday if I tell an incredulous tale that no one believes, they'll think that about me.
Exactly.
But she has an incredibly high IQ. She does well at her job. We must listen. It's not like she, drinks some
mimosas
bad wine and
says fuck.
Took a nap out on the sidewalk and woke up going, well, that's weird. All kinds of things hurt.
Right.
I remember bright lights.
We're going to get to things hurting in the bright lights for sure.
Of course we are.
It should also be noted that Ben and Barney Hill...
Betty?
I just changed the narrative of that story.
That's okay. We can make this equal here. It could have been either.
It could have. Betty and Barney
judgment,
Hill,
Betty. You do you.
They were not known to engage in any sort of hallucinogens at any time. They weren't alcoholics. We're not dealing with the struggles of addiction or
right. And to our knowledge, they weren't probing each other anally for sexual pleasure.
No. I mean, if they were, they did not disclose that.
I mean, it was the 60s. If you did, I think you'd disclose it. We were free then. We were freely
allowed to do
then.
that. Yeah. Now we can only joke about it. So the Hills said that they continued driving on the isolated road, moving very slowly through Franconia Notch in order to observe the object as it came even closer. At one point, the object passed above a restaurant and a signal tower on top of Cannon Mountain and then came out near the old man of the mountain. This stuff doesn't mean anything to us, but people who are from New Hampshire probably know exactly what we're talking about. Betty testified that it was at least, which is to say she said, that it was at least 1.5 times the length of the granite cliff profile. Okay, so it's bigger than the cliffs that they're driving through, which was 40 feet, and that it seemed to be rotating. So the couple watched as the silent, illuminated craft moved erratically and bounced back and forth in the night sky. About a mile south of Indian Head, they said, the object rapidly descended toward their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. The huge, silent craft hovered 80 to 100 feet above the hills, because it's bigger than the actual mountain.
It wasn't going to fit down there in between.
Nope. And it is hovering above their 1957 Chevy Bel Air. My mom had one.
That's a great car.
It was. And it filled the entire field of view in the windshield. So as they're looking straight at it, all right?
I picture it.
It reminded Barney of a huge pancake. Now, Barney is loaded. He's carrying. He's got a pistol in his pocket.
Fuck yeah, you do, Barney.
And he was forced to stop in the middle of the road because here's this craft hovering, And they get out, and I lost my spot. Got it. He's got his pistol. He stepped away from the vehicle and he moved closer to the object. Using his binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures who were peering out of the craft's windows looking at him. I'm just picturing like a deer in the headlights. Like, I'm looking at you, looking at me.
And I'm picturing aliens on a nice family outing who have stopped really quickly to observe some creatures. And they're like, look at this one. He has something in his hand.
Yeah, look at that.
Like they're innocently watching the safari.
In unison, all but one figure moved to what appeared to be a panel at the rear wall of the hallway that encircled the front portion of the craft. Okay, I mean, just like we see now.
I'm picturing it.
I will
outside,
say this:
the big window.
Their experience did shape a lot of what pop culture uses to have alien invasions and depict what alien aircraft and alienoids may look like. Okay, this did come from their experience.
But they were in Vermont or New Hampshire at this point now.
Mm-hmm. The one remaining figure that remained in the craft, looking through the windshield essentially at him, continued to look at Barney and communicated a message telling him to stay where you are and keep looking. So Barney had a recollection of observing the humanoid forms wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. Red lights on what appeared to be like the bat wing fins on the craft began to telescope out of the sides of the craft, and a long structure descended from the bottom of the craft. So like, a handicap ramp.
Like a slide.
Yeah. It descends from the bottom. The silent craft approached to what Barney estimated to be within 50 to 80 feet overhead. Okay. So Barney takes the binoculars away from his eyes. He runs back to his car in a near hysterical state, telling Betty, they're going to capture us. So he saw the object again. So he's back in the car and they're trying to bust balls away.
Amen, right? Brother. That's what I would have done to start with.
Right. I'm not getting out to look at it.
Oh, but our curious minds.
I know it's called Crime Curious, but I'm not that fucking curious. I would not have stopped if I didn't have to.
No, me either. There are rules when it comes to this thing. We've all seen horror movies.
Right. Except for me.
Oh.
I try not to.
Remind me, and I have some things to assist you with this later, actually.
Okay. He saw the object again shift in location to now it's directly above the vehicle instead of like in front of it. He drove away as fast as he could, telling Betty to look for the object, like keep your eyes peeled, but I'm out of here. She rolled down the window. She looked up. Almost immediately, they heard a series of like beeping, buzzing sounds, which they said seemed to bounce off the trunk of their vehicle. It was sound waves, but it was like bouncing off the trunk.
Oh, they are locked and loaded.
Oh, yeah.
They're locked.
Yeah, they're in their sights.
We're about to beam up.
Yes, exactly.
I know it. I know it's coming.
So the car vibrated and a tingling sensation passed through the Hills' bodies. They said that they experienced an onset of an altered state of consciousness that left their minds dulled. A second series of beeping or buzzing sounds returned them to full consciousness, and they found that they had traveled nearly 35 miles south, but only had vague, spotty memories of this section of the road. They recalled making a sudden, sharp, unplanned turn, encountering a roadblock, and observing a fiery orb in the road. They came to around 2 hours and 35 miles. 2 hours had passed in that 35 miles down the road. Okay. So arriving home at dawn, they felt dirty. They asserted that they had some weird sensations and impulses that they could not really explain. So Betty insisted on keeping her luggage near the back door rather than the main part of the house. And their watches, both of their watches that had worked previously to this encounter, never worked again.
Weird. I don't like that stuff.
I know. This is called, so this time lost that they have. This is what later researchers become very intrigued with, of like, okay, you recognize that you went into an altered state of consciousness, and then you came to 2 hours lost in your lives and 35 miles down the road from where you originally remember losing consciousness.
One must assume that if we're dealing with some type of a higher life form, they have the proclivities to be able to give us amnesiacs the same as we do.
Definitely.
I mean, surgical medications are amnesiacs.
We are fucking basic beings. Let's be real.
We're the basic bitches of the universe, people.
We are 100%. You've got to know that there has got to be other planets with way smarter beings than us. We have to tell people not to eat fucking Tide Pods. Okay?
You are right.
So we are the worst.
All kinds of warnings on all kinds of products.
Yes.
I bet aliens don't have those.
You know, as a lawyer, Megan, that there's a lot of laws that exist because of the stupidity of humanity.
Well,
so come on.
I mean, I don't want to go that far. I'm sure that there were all kinds of these things that occurred back in the Stone Ages too.
I'm sure.
But you don't hear about any aliens abducting those morons. It's always us.
It's always us. And I don't blame them. So Barney said that the leather strap for his binoculars was torn. He couldn't recall tearing it. The toes of his best dress shoes were scraped. which would have been a big deal in 1961.
Yeah, you polished those bitches.
Yeah. He says that he was compelled to examine his genitals in the bathroom.
Oh, yeah, that's why.
But he did,
because men don't constantly examine those anyway.
I feel
and make sure
like
it's still there.
If I told Matt this part of the story, he would be like, I examine my genitals in the bathroom daily.
Well,
so,
yeah, I think, let us know, guys, but I think that's pretty normal.
I think it is.
So he
too.
was compelled.
This time he
to
did.
examine
He
his
didn't find
testicles.
he found nothing unusual, but he felt like
He looks down disappointingly. Well, you guys look the same.
they couldn't even make it bigger.
Betty's outside going, was there any differences? Were there any differences? Please. Shit.
No,
go ahead.
All the same.
He
But
said
he just
dejectedly.
Felt compelled to examine himself. Yep. They took long showers to remove the possible contamination that they felt, because like I said, they felt dirty.
I've been on those dates.
Yeah, so I get that. And they each drew a picture of what they had observed. So separately, they're drawing. Yep. Mm-hmm. So
what a good idea.
I thought that too. Well, he does have an IQ of 140.
Humans remember things differently, and they do in real life too. Not that this isn't real life, but with real cases.
They do.
Criminal cases.
And I'm glad that you said that, because I'm later I was going to pull at that and say, this is why sometimes, and there are a lot of cases where people are solely convicted on eyewitness testimony.
Oh, yeah.
And it is not okay, man.
Yeah.
Because we all interpret and look at things differently.
That's why there's specific jury instructions that judges give for juries to take these things into consideration. You just have to listen to the directions.
To the instructions. Mm-hmm.
You listen and you read the instructions before you start drawing the paper. You saw that too, right?
I did. There was a tiny little fruit fly because we have orange juice.
And I'm reaching at him like he's a gossamer strand. And I'm like, I missed him. And then you're reaching for it. And all of a sudden we're reaching into the air while we're talking about aliens.
I know.
If Matt walked by right now, he'd be like, Jesus, she needs to fucking leave.
When we go to video episodes, people are going to be very entertained.
All right. Well, I will put on makeup and wear a bra.
Oh, no bras required. That actually is going to be a tagline for our podcast, I think. Crime Curious, no bras required.
Oh, well, it is for me.
So the Hills said that they tried to reconstruct the chronologic, events as they witnessed, the UFO, as they're now thinking that that's what happened, and they drove home. Immediately, as they're talking to each other, Megan, and they're trying to recall from point A to when they get home, their heads start buzzing with sounds and their memories become fragmented. It's like static on a television.
Oh, shit.
Is how it kind of sounded to me. Like we are trying to recall, trying to pull that up in our brain, and it's static and it hurts.
Someone poked around in there.
Mm-hmm. After sleeping for a few hours, Betty woke up. She placed the shoes and clothing that she had worn during the drive into her closet, observing that her dress was torn at the hem, the zipper, and the liner. Later, when she retrieved the items from her closet, she noted a pinkish powder on her dress. So she hung the dress on her clothesline and the pink powder blew away. But the dress was just damaged, so she threw it away and then was like, wait, nope. She changed her mind, retrieved the dress, and hung it back into her closet. And I will tell you right now, eventually they are collected, and five laboratories have conducted chemical and forensic analysis on the dress. And it doesn't tell us
what it was,
exactly
what the substances were.
What substances were found, and I find that interesting. So the government does get involved with them, just so you know.
Oh, I don't like that. We're from the government. We're here to help.
I work for the government.
So do I. A branch of it. I'm just saying, That's not, come on, people. That's never good when they show up in their SWAT uniforms and say, ma'am, I'm going to need everything from your closet. And then they say,
in their Men in Black suits.
Right.
No.
Dude, if they look like Will Smith and they're wearing the sunglasses, you can take whatever you want.
For sure.
I'll volunteer.
Including me.
Yeah, take me with you.
Is this a government abduction time? Okay.
They're like, I knew it. So don't flashy thing me. So do we know if there were substances found in when they analyzed the dress? Or they don't disclose anything.
They don't disclose anything. We just know that dress went to 5 different laboratories.
So after the first one, they were like, well, that's weird.
That's what I was thinking,
I mean,
too.
that's what I'm
better send it to my boss at this laboratory. And he's like, no, that doesn't track.
There
Let's
is
send it to the other guy.
nothing. There's material that is not of this earth.
Now, there were also shiny concentric circles on the car's trunk that had not been there the previous day. Remember, they said that they felt like sound waves were like bouncing off their trunk. Betty and Barney experimented with a compass on their vehicle, and they noted that when they moved it closer to the spots, the needle would whirl rapidly. But if they moved it a few inches away from the shiny spots, it would drop down.
That's weird, too.
Yeah. Although I do believe that aren't compasses done by a magnetic pole and stuff like what?
Depending. I mean, I just keep thinking of a regular compass, like the ones we used in geometry, where it was the point that you put in the middle, and then you're talking about an
like
actual
the Boy Scout like compass.
That is going to go with magnetic pull to the poles.
Right. On September 21st, Betty telephoned the Pease Air Force Base to report their UFO encounter. She was very scared of being labeled an eccentric.
I don't blame you, Betty.
She did withhold some of the details at first, but then on September 22nd, Major Paul W. Henderson telephoned the Hills for a more detailed interview. And so that report, dated September 26th, determined that the Hills had probably misidentified the planet Jupiter. This was later changed to optical condition, inversion, or insufficient data. And report 100-1-61, Air Intelligent Information Record. His report was forwarded to the Blue Book Project. It's called Project Blue Book.
Oh, ominous.
The U.S. Air Force's UFO Research Project. So when he interviewed them, he was like, yeah, probably wasn't a spacecraft. I bet it was planet Jupiter. That's what I'm going to write in my report. But I'm also going to take all of this information and I'm going to forward it to Project Blue Book, the U.S. Air Force's UFO Research Project.
CYA.
Yep. Within days of the encounter, Betty borrowed a UFO book from a local library, and it had been written by retired Marine Corps Major Donald E. Kehoe. He was also the head of the NICAP, a civilian UFO research group. These things exist.
Of course they did. And you said the operative word, which was civilian. So this was not a government agency. This was somebody who started their own little investigation.
Nope, but this...
like a PI. An interplanetary private investigator. That's what I'm going to be.
And and this book was written by a Marine Corps Major, Donald E. Kehoe. He was retired.
Okay. Oh, so he knew some shit.
Yeah, he
saw some shit.
And he was the head of NICAP, which was the civilian, he's the head of this civilian research group.
Yeah, he started that shit out after he left the military.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
This is what I'm saying.
It's starting to get this conspiracy theory is opening wide up right here.
Like a pair of spread legs. So
I'm taking a drink.
On September 26th, Betty wrote to Kehoe, and she related the full story this time, including the details about the humanoid figures that Barney had observed through binoculars. Betty wrote that she and Barney were considering hypnosis to help recall what had happened. His letter was eventually passed on to Walter N. Webb, a Boston astronomer who was also a member of the NICAP. Okay. So Webb met with the Hills on October 21st, 1961. In a 6-hour interview, the Hills relayed all that they could remember of the UFO encounter. Now, Barney said that he had developed a sort of mental block that he suspected were where some portions of the event had happened, but he wishes that he could remember, but he can feel himself being blocked from remembering them. He described in detail all that he could remember about the craft and the appearance of the somehow not human figures aboard the craft. Webb stated in his report that they were telling the truth and the incident probably occurred exactly as reported, except for some minor uncertainties and technicalities that must be tolerated in any such observations, where human judgment is involved. And what he means by that is human interpretation, right?
You try to fill your brain with missing pieces logically.
Yes.
And you don't even know you're doing it.
Yes. Just like when they were describing the black, shiny clothing Okay, we're calling it clothing because that's our name for it. They said it was like a uniform. That's an interpretation, right? Based on knowledge that their brains already had about what uniforms look like. Same things with their hats. Later, Betty describes that she feels like the hats were like military in style because her brain is filling that information in. For all we know, it was a part of their actual brain.
Their head, right?
Right. But this is how the human brain fills these things in. Their experience ends up kicking off an Air Force inquiry that was part of the secret initiative, Project Blue Book, like I had said, okay, that investigated UFO sightings across the country. The incident would also become the first ever widely publicized alien abduction account, and it shapes how stories like it were told and understood from then on. Like I said, how pop culture now talks about, things. There's, of course, a lot of debate that continues whether or not Betty and Barney were liars, fantasists, crackpots, or simply sleep-deprived people who would later recovered seriously scrambled memories from their sleep deprivation, right?
But for both of them to react identically from sleep deprivation, that's hard to believe.
I agree. And we're going to get to them going under hypnosis separately. And that's very interesting.
Okay.
10 days after the alleged UFO encounter, though, Betty began having a series of vivid dreams, and they continued for 5 successive nights. Never in her memory had she recalled dreams in such detail and intensity. Okay, so she's not a vivid dreamer by nature.
But these ones were.
Mm-hmm. They stopped abruptly after 5 nights and never returned. So they occupied her thoughts during the day. When she mentioned them to Barney, he was sympathetic but not too concerned, and the matter was dropped. And Betty didn't mention them to Barney again. But then in November, she began writing down the details of her dreams because they stuck with her so much. And in one dream, she and Barney encountered a roadblock and men who surrounded their car. She lost consciousness, she struggled to regain it, and then she realized that she was being forced by 2 small men to walk in a forest at night. And of seeing Barney walking behind her, though she had called to him, he seemed to be in a trance or sleepwalking. So the men, when I said 2 small men, she figures the men stood about 5'5" or 5'4" tall, somewhere in between there.
So is she taller than that?
Yes. I believe she is. They wore matching blue uniforms with caps similar to those worn by military cadets. That's how she's seeing this in her dream. They appeared nearly human with black hair, dark eyes, prominent noses, and bluish lips. Their skin was a grayish color. In the dreams, Betty, Barney, and the men walked up a ramp into a disc-shaped craft of metallic appearance. Once inside, Barney and Betty were separated. She protested and was told by a man that she identified as the leader that if she and Barney were examined together, it would take much longer to conduct the exams. So they were taken into separate rooms. So this
she understands what they're saying.
She does. And these are her dreams that she wrote down in November. She writes these dreams down in November before she undergoes hypnosis. I'm just pointing that out right now.
Okay.
Betty then dreamt that a new man, similar to the others, entered to conduct her exam with the leader, the person she identified as the leader. She called this new man the examiner. That's how she identified him. He was pleasant, he was calm, and the leader and the examiner spoke to her in English, but when they spoke with one another, their dialect was very imperfect. It was difficult to understand them. They were speaking in a different language, and when they spoke English to her, it was difficult to understand.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit. That's why I asked the question earlier, like, as I'm rolling my eyes, oh yeah, they spoke to her in perfect English. Everything was just like they. Okay.
No. She really had to strain to understand them. Mm-hmm. The examiner told Betty that he would conduct a few tests to note the differences between humans and the craft's occupants. So in other words, between your species and mine.
Okay.
He seated her on a chair and a bright light was shown on her. The man then cut off a lock of her hair. He examined her eyes, ears, mouth, teeth, throat, and hands, and he shaved trimmings from her fingernails. After examining her legs and feet, he used a dull knife similar to a letter opener to scrape some skin onto what resembled like cellophane to her.
Some type of testing equipment.
He then tested
like the glass slides that you used to use with a microscope.
That's what I was picturing. Yeah. He then tested her nervous system and he thrust a needle into her navel, which caused her agonizing pain. And when she started twisting and showing that hurt, he waved a hand in front of her eyes and the pain vanished. Can we get that skill down here?
That's a hell of a painkiller.
Yeah.
You are no longer in pain, Charnell.
That would be amazing. So then the examiner left the room and Betty engaged in conversation with the person that the being that she identified as the leader. No, the examiner left the room. So it's just her and the leader. She picked up picked up a book because there was rows of strange symbols on these books. And so she had picked one out and the leader actually said, you could take that home with you. She also asked where he came from and he pulled down an instructional map dotted with stars to show her where they came from. Okay. In Betty's dream account, the men began escorting the Hills from the ship when a disagreement broke out. The leader then informed Betty that she could not keep the book, stating that they had decided that the other men did not want her to even remember the encounter. Betty insisted that no matter what they did to her memory, she one day would recall these events. She and Barney were then taken to their car, where the leader suggested that they wait to watch the craft's departure. They did so, and then resumed their drive. So another part of this as well that I forgot to put in here that I had read was that Betty remembered when she was in the exam room, and maybe it comes up during hypnosis. So if I repeat myself during hypnosis, that's fine. But I thought this was kind of a funny detail. When they were examining her, one of them came in from Barney's examination completely flabbergasted because his teeth came out.
Did he have dentures?
He had dentures. And so she was laughing and explained to them what dentures were and how, you know, some people have their teeth can come in and out. Mm-hmm.
What an interesting detail.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Charnell, you're telling me some stuff. My curiosity is piqued.
I know. I'm telling you, I loved researching this.
This is a great story.
So they resumed their drive. Now then, she wrote all of this down in November 1961. And then on November 23rd, 1962, the Hills attend a meeting at the parsonage of their church where there was a guest speaker, Captain Ben H. Sweat of the United States Air Force. Having an interest in hypnosis, the Hills approached Sweat privately and relayed their strange encounter. Now, Sweat was really interested on the missing time part of their account. So whether he knew something from his time in the Air Force that this was a common denominator amongst these type of encounters, we don't know. But that was what he was really interested in. And so he's like, he asked the Hills, do you think that you would be willing to undergo hypnosis? And he's like, I am not going to do it because I'm an amateur hypnotist. But I can connect you with someone who is an expert at this, and that's who you should go to. And he even cautioned them, like, don't just go asking an amateur hypnotist to handle this situation.
Your brain. We're not going to fuck with your brain.
Yep. So on March 3rd, 1963, the Hills first publicly discussed the UFO encounter with a group at their church. So it has been a year and a half at this point in time from their encounter that they first tell people of their, in their friend group about this.
Yeah, this isn't sounding like your typical crazy National Enquirer, I was abducted by alien story.
No, time went on before they were willing to put this information into people that they know, because they knew they were rational enough and sound enough in mind to know how it sounds.
Well-respected people who actually were able to identify that this sounds so crazy. Mm-hmm. I don't want people to know this.
Yes. Yep. And then on September 7th, 1963, Captain Sweat returned and gave a formal lecture on hypnosis to a meeting at the Unitarian Church. After the lecture, the Hills told him that Barney was actually going to a psychiatrist, and a psychiatrist named Mr. Stevens, who they liked and trusted. And so Captain Sweat was actually like, you know what? Why doesn't Barney ask Mr. Stevens about the use of hypnosis, in his case? This is bothering these people so much to the point where they're getting psychiatric help, which I can kind of see that. Could you imagine being driven crazy by thoughts that you can't bring to the forefront of your mind, but you know that they're there? Betty was at least able to have those 5 successive nights of dreams and write them out.
Yeah, which had to have been incredibly therapeutic. No, that would be.
But Barney hasn't. He's got this.
He has a high IQ, so
static.
he's super intelligent, and I think that would drive me nuts.
Yeah. So what Mr. Stevens does is refers the Hills to the Hills. That's their last name, but it sounds weird when you say it in a sentence like that. So he refers them to Benjamin Simon of Boston, who's a well-respected hypnotist.
We don't have them around now. I mean, there are hypnotists, but you don't hear the doctors say, I'm going to send you to a very well-respected hypnotist in the area, Charnell.
Yeah. I know. I think research and science has come a long way since then. Or maybe we just haven't explored it enough and just, chalk it up to being a crackpot science.
They just figure that the waves from all of our electronic devices have destroyed our heads anyway. So there's just no point.
Honestly, just to be frank, I feel like they're like, meh, this medication will do you just fine.
Oh, well, there is that. Mm-hmm. Let's chemically take care of it instead of the powers of persuasion.
Mm-hmm. Right. On November 3rd, 1963, the Hills spoke before a UFO study group. And
because that was a thing.
It was. And the 2 state UFO study group. So this happened in Quincy Center, Massachusetts. They traveled to Massachusetts to do that. And they first spoke with Simon, the hypnotist, on December 14th, 1963. Early in their discussions, Simon determined that the UFO encounter was causing Barney far more worry and anxiety than he was willing to admit, hence why he was seeing a psychiatrist. And he did think that it would benefit him mentally if he underwent hypnosis, but also he initially dismissed the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Okay, he's like,
I would have too.
I just don't think this is real, but this is clearly causing you so much anxiety and making you so nervous that I think if we do some sessions, this could be therapeutic for you. So he began hypnotizing the Hills on January 4th, 1964. This encounter happened in 1961.
Okay.
So we are almost 3 years.
3 years out.
And they were hypnotized on several times, different sessions. Separately, yes. Between January 4th, 1964 and June 6th, 1964. So about 6 months, worth. Simon conducted the sessions of them separately, as I said, so that they could not overhear one another's recollection. At the end of each session, he would reinstate amnesia on them.
Why?
Okay? So that they were not plagued by the memories. So if this really was an alien abduction, his belief is that them wiping the memories was a good coping mechanism for them.
So he's getting the information and then making sure that they don't remember them as they come out in the hypnosis session.
Yes, because he also doesn't want them talking about it in their sessions to each other, further convoluting the entire science of it all.
I feel some ways about disclosures
But if you think about it, so if
for research purposes, it makes perfect sense.
And these two are, they're happily married, so they're gonna talk about what they remembered from their sessions.
Yes, nothing like laying in bed at night with your spouse and you say, "Remember that thing that alien did to me with that thing? Can you do that?"
Right, exactly.
On second thought, let's ask the doc to wipe that out.
Right,
because that didn't work out so well.
It didn't. Oh, shit. That's funny. So Simon hypnotized Barney first. His recall of witnessing non-human figures was quite emotional, punctuated with expressions of fear, emotional outbursts, and just plain being scared.
He was terrified.
He was.
She seemed to handle it better. She even was going to read at one point. She's like, I'm going to grab me a book.
I do feel like they had different experiences because she described the leader and her examiner as being, it's almost like they had a good bedside manner. Aside from, poking her navel, which we find out later was a pregnancy test.
Ooh, but they wiped the pain from her immediately.
Exactly.
Once they realized, oh shit, we didn't know that would hurt you.
Yep.
Here, let me fix it.
It almost seemed like they were much more tender. Like she had a different, more tender experience.
Maybe females don't look like that on their planet.
I'm guessing not. We are a pretty hot species.
Right. They're like, I don't know what she's got going on there in the front and the back, but I like it.
Why don't our women come with those holes? So Barney said that due to his fear, he kept his eyes closed for much of the abduction and physical examination, which I do think if we're in the realm of this being a possibility of happening at all. Okay, that is the realm I'm asking you all to play with me in today. If that really did happen, think about, Betty didn't. Betty kept her eyes open.
I would.
And she engaged with them.
I would.
Calming her fears, right? Because they really weren't malicious, truly.
Oh, no, I'm keeping my eyes open because I'm going to take you down later, mother.
And this is why I think that Barney is so scared and comes away from this with so much anxiety because he kept his eyes, he was so terrified, he kept his eyes closed and he could never qualm his fears. So they're heightened in his brain.
How interesting.
Now, based on his early responses, Simon told Barney that he could not remember the hypnosis sessions until he was certain that he could remember them without being traumatized. Because Barney is so terrified. Simon does not want him remembering even the details of what he can remember, right? Under hypnosis, and this is consistent with his conscious recall as well, Barney reported that the binocular strap had broken when he ran away from the UFO back to his car. Remember when he turned and was like, oh shit, they're going to abduct us?
Yes.
I'm going to get in the car and go now. He now, through hypnosis, he now remembers, oh, okay, that is when my strap broke. He recalled driving the car away from the UFO, but that afterwards he felt irresistibly compelled to pull off the road and drive into the woods. He eventually sighted 6 men standing in the dirt road. Now remember, Betty did say she was walking into the woods at one point in time, and he was behind her. He recalled in his hypnosis that the car stalled and 3 of the men approached the car. They had told Barney not to fear them. He was still anxious, however, and he reported that the leader told Barney to close his eyes. So while hypnotized, Barney said, I felt like the eyes had pushed into my eyes.
What?
So his eyes are closed, but he feels like he could still see them, like their eyes were still on him. Barney described the beings as generally similar to Betty's, hypnotic, not her dream recollection, but her under hypnosis. They described them terrifyingly similar. The beings often stared into his eyes, and Barney had what he felt was a terrifying, mesmerizing effect of those eyes. Under hypnosis, Barney said things like, oh, those eyes, they're in my brain. That was from his first session. Then he said, quote, I was told to close my eyes because I saw 2 eyes coming close to mine, and I felt like the eyes had pushed into my eyes. That's his second hypnosis session. And then he said, quote, all I see are those eyes. I'm not even afraid that they're not connected to a body. They're just there. They're just up close to me, pressing against my eyes. And that was from another hypnosis session.
He is terrified.
He is, completely. Barney related that he and Betty were taken onto a disc-shaped craft where they were separated. He was escorted to a room by 3 of the men and told to lie on a small rectangular table. His narrative of the exam was fragmented because he had kept his eyes closed for most of it, but he recalls a cup-like device placed over his genitals. He did not experience an orgasm, though he is convinced that a sperm sample had been taken.
And he doesn't remember pain?
No. But neither does Betty. There is no pain in either one of their descriptions.
She doesn't disclose any manipulation of her genitals other than her navel.
No, it's just the navel. Yep, just the navel, in which she does remember that pain, but then remembers once they realized she was in pain, they instantly took it away.
But they saw those weird jangly looking things on Barney and we're like, let's stick a suction cup on this.
For sure.
See what happens to this fella.
Let's contain this a little bit.
Yeah.
Suction cup for you.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It looks so angry. Why?
Yeah, right, exactly. Why is this thing mad at me?
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess it spit at us.
It did. The men scraped his skin and peered in his eyes and mouth. A tube or cylinder was inserted into his anus very quickly and then removed.
But he does remember an anal test.
He does.
A rectal test.
Yep. Someone felt his spine and seemed to be counting his vertebrae. While Betty reported a conversation with the leader in English, Barney said that he heard them speaking in a mumbling language that he did not understand. Betty also mentioned this detail. A few times...
But did they ever talk to him? He may not have heard English because they weren't talking to him.
Yeah.
They were talking to her.
And he wasn't willing to talk
he's not
to
engaged.
them.
She's like,
Betty's asking
eyes
questions.
closed tight, hands clenching the cheeks. The sheets. Fuck.
I think he's clenching his cheeks after the anal probe. Well, I'll tell you that.
You said it.
Right. So Betty had also mentioned this detail. The few times that they communicated with him, Barney said it seemed to be thought transference at the time. He was unfamiliar with the word telepathy. So he didn't use the word telepathy.
ESP.
Yeah, but he is saying they didn't really speak to me like through their mouths, and both Betty and Barney actually had said this. Like they weren't communicating in English with a mouth. It was through my brain, like a thought transference is what they called it.
I dig it. I wish that we would all communicate that way as well.
I wish we could too. Damn, that would be fun.
I mean,
we'd be in so much trouble.
I've heard of it. Do you really want people to know what you're thinking? I'm like, dude, I actually say it.
Yeah.
I don't have a filter. It comes out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it really wouldn't make a whole lot
No,
of
it wouldn't hurt
difference
my feelings
for
at
my
all.
life.
No.
Barney recalled being escorted from the ship and taken to his car. In a daze, he watched the ship leave, just like Betty had recalled. Barney remembered a light appearing on the road, and he said, "Oh no, not again." And he recalled Betty's speculation that the light might have been the moon, though the moon had set several hours earlier. He also stated that he attempted to produce a code-like buzzing sounds, which seemed to strike the car's trunk a second time by driving from side to side and stopping and starting the vehicle. But his attempt was unsuccessful. So after they were returned, he still felt like they were like about to beam up with the car again.
Well, but he has no recollection at that point in time of what has happened, right? So to his knowledge, he's driving along. He has a lapse in memory or time. Like you've been there, right? You've been driving on the road and all of a sudden you go, oh shit, where's the last 5 minutes gone? How did I get here?
Yes.
And so
that is your brain going to sleep briefly.
Yeah, it is. And I do it
We should cover
often.
it on our spin-off podcast.
Absolutely. Let's
I will
discuss
cover that.
It's terrifying.
I used to teach about it in my psychology classes.
Oh, well, there
college.
you go. We have a volunteer. Thank you, Professor.
I will. I'll wear my naughty professor outfit too.
Excellent. Does that mean I can wear my naughty schoolgirl outfit?
Yes, you can. It'd be a great episode.
This is videoed, by the way, people.
Right, yeah.
What's Jason going to be? He can just sit in the corner and look creepy.
He's going to have a pipe. That's what he's going to have.
Love it. Love it.
Oh, we just birthed a new episode.
Sorry, guys.
You'll hear more about it later, we promise. So, but yes, that is actually your brain going to sleep. And I had wondered about that. I won't lie. I had wondered if Betty had actually fallen asleep and if Barney had went into a sleep-like trance in where there are certain parts of your brain that completely shut off that you don't need to drive and to do those muscle memory type of things. But,
and then something abruptly wakes them up, and all of a sudden his brain is awake and she's woken up from actual
they're like,
sleep.
where's
and
the
they're
last
like,
2
what
hours?
happened? What a great explanation, because I like to be a naysayer, and
I know, but how did all their clothes get ripped?
We're not gonna. Well, I don't know how you sleep.
I have never. I can't say that. I have ripped a t-shirt once.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Okay, let's talk about.
Or your tank top becomes a WWF sumo thing, and there's a titty out to the right, and the armpits ripped out, and you're like, "What just happened?" And you're all like sideways in your sheet. I've called for help once.
Just don't sleep
Help
in a tank
me.
top. It's the worst.
Sleep in a tank top.
No, the boobies never stay in the tank top.
Well, they do if you find the right ones. I'll send you my recommendation.
Okay, because I have never went to sleep in a tank top.
Well, don't wear a racer back and don't wear it backwards. That's my advice to you.
Or do.
Whatever you're into. Comfort means something different to everyone.
It's true. Let's talk about Betty's sessions.
Good. I'm interested in Betty because she seems like a much more willing participant.
Yeah. I think Betty was hoping for the anal probe. But Betty,
I'm sorry, Betty.
Betty says under hypnosis that her account was extremely similar to her 5 dreams that she had wrote down about. Okay. There were some difference though, mainly pertaining to her capture and her release. And also the technology on the craft was different in her hypnosis memory. The short men differed kind of in appearance, and the sequential order of the abduction differed, which that makes sense from a dream state and then to quote reality. The sequential order would be off of things. Barney and Betty's memories in hypnotic regression were, however, consistent with one another. Very consistent. Betty exhibited considerable emotional distress when recounting her capture and examination. Simon had actually ended one session early because tears were flowing down her cheeks, and he felt like he was re-traumatizing her.
He was.
Mm-hmm. So he then gave Betty the hypnotic suggestion that she could sketch a copy of the star map that she later described as a 3-dimensional projection similar to a hologram. Remember when I said that the being had pulled down a map?
He actually produced a hologram.
He produced a hologram to show her where they are from in the universe. Through the map, she said that the map had many stars, and she drew only those that stood out in her memory. Her map consisted of 12, and I will post, we have a picture of it.
Oh, cool.
I will post pictures of this. So her map consisted of 12 prominent stars that were connected by lines and 3 lesser ones that formed like a distinctive triangle. And she said that she was told by one of the beings that the stars connected by solid lines, when the stars were connected by solid lines that were formed, those were trade routes.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So we would call them a constellation because we like to, have something to view to make it
like a shape.
Recognizable.
Yes.
And they're saying they're
for
trade
them,
routes.
those are trade routes, and the dashed lines were the less traveled stars. So those are like the country. We've got like the city travel and the country travel.
Earth had to have been a rural detour.
For sure.
Like there was a construction issue getting to Alpha Centauri.
You're
and so we
absolutely right.
took the dotted road over to Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Mother Gia.
Earth.
What is, I'm right. What
You're
is,
so right.
oh my God, what are these things? They're all getting about in these little vehicles.
Oh my God, we ended up in the ghetto again. Damn it.
Oh, they're all armed at the front window going, well, somebody better bring one in. I
Right.
don't, we better decontaminate.
So after the hypnosis sessions, Simon speculated that Barney's recollection of the UFO encounter was possibly a fantasy that was inspired by Betty's dreams. Simon thought that it was the most reasonable and consistent explanation that he could provide because, he's basing himself in reality.
Yes.
Barney rejected this idea, noting that while their memories were consistent in some regards, there were also portions of both of their narratives that were unique to each other because they were separated. So Barney was now ready to accept that he had been abducted by occupants of a UFO, though he never embraced it as fully as Betty did. But he also did die in 1969. Whereas Betty...
How old was he?
Well, he was born in what did I say?
Because they'd
at the
only been
beginning?
married for like 15 months, you said?
Yeah. So Barney was born in 1922 and died in 1969.
Oh.
Betty was born in 1919 and she lived until 2004.
Betty.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like he died a little bit young.
He did.
Like, what would that be? Like in his 40s?
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. Why did he die so young?
I don't know. I'm sure that there's an explanation. Yeah, was he how impaired as high people of high intelligence, and then have something like that happen that's unexplained? I mean, how bad was he struggling with mental health?
It's a way.
You know where I'm going with this.
I do.
Am I worried about how his life ended?
Yeah.
Sorry,
No.
I'm making a whole bunch of noise now.
I see that with your ass, as a matter of fact. I'm sorry.
Moving the chair around, and it's not your fault that I'm old and I have to stretch every once in a while. I just slept wrong.
Need a yoga stretch in the middle of podcasting.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that'd be great. Mm-hmm. Can we use yoga balls and implements while we would do this?
Tax write-off.
Only for the videos, though.
Right. So, though the Hills and Simon disagreed about the cause of their distress, they all concurred that the hypnosis sessions were effective, and the Hills were no longer tormented by abduction anxiety. So that was good. At the end of the day, something good did come out of those sessions. However, when they were complete, he wrote an article for the Hills for the Psychiatric Opinion Journal, explaining his conclusions that the case was a singular psychological aberration.
Oh.
Yeah. Because he's not going to go to a respected journal and be like, dude, I think these people were abducted by aliens. You know, it is his career on the line. But he did write it and did write about the details.
But they're individual people, so he means there were 2 psychological aberrations.
At the same time, and that's what gets me.
You know, there are some things that I suppose, because somebody like me who wants to pick these things apart could say, you know, yeah, she wrote her dreams down. Yes, that stuff was shared. Could they have corroborated all of these type of things?
The thing is, though,
I don't know.
The dreams started after they had already contacted the first military outreach.
Fair.
I mean, truly, I'm thinking.
And given a story about what they actually remembered. It was the part where they don't recall from the time they were taken to the time they were driving down the road going, what the fuck just happened? Do you remember driving 35 miles?
They lost 2 hours of their life. Also, they returned home. I don't know if I think I may have skipped over this in my notes and forgot to mention this, but they returned home early dawn, like hours after they should have, because they were supposed to be home between 2 and 3 a.m. and they returned home after the sun is already starting.
4 or 5. So you did mention that it took them like 2.5 hours or so to get 35 miles, which I know cars drove maybe a little. They didn't drive a little slower. There's some really fast fucking 60s cars there. I was just going to say they might have got home a lot quicker.
Right.
So
yeah, no, especially with not having as much traffic on the roads, right? But
yeah, that something
so
happened.
there is that too.
And nobody thinks they just pulled off for a drug-induced quickie.
No, they had never used substances
Come
before
with me
or after.
Into the woods. I want to show you something.
So I'll tell you that they went back to their regular lives. They were willing to discuss the UFO encounters with family and friends after the hypnosis sessions. So I think they were less fearful at that point in time. But they really made no effort to seek publicity. On October 25th, 1965, the front page story of the Boston Traveler asked, UFO chiller, did they seize couple? They didn't seek publicity.
Publicity found them.
It did. Whoops.
It's a good
My
story.
chin just hit that was.
I thought it was very graceful.
Woo.
Just don't chip a tooth.
Aggressive. Sorry. So yes, it did find them. And then of course they find the article that was written in the Psychological Opinion Journal. So then they're like, oh, you underwent hypnosis. So then they got, a hold of those interpretations and whatnot too.
Well, this story is more interesting to the media and in these, Inquirer-esque gossipy type magazines because there's some scientific stuff to go with it. It's not your run-of-the-mill guy who comes out of, no offense anybody, but from the trailer in Arizona and says, I was scooped up by an alien and they probed my anus.
Isn't that the opening scene of Independence Day?
Yeah, probably.
And you know what? Describe that.
Well, I freaking love those type of movies.
Me too.
I love alien stuff.
Yeah, me too. Weirdly, I don't like horror, but I like alien stuff.
Because it doesn't always have to be horror. Some of them are, though.
I think this one really wasn't. So, and then in 1966, that's when John Fuller wrote he contacted the Hills and they wrote the book, The Interrupted Journey, about this case. The book included a copy of Betty's sketch of the star map. And it was a quick success and went through many printings. And I did
somebody map it?
They did. Yeah, I'm going to show it to you because I have a picture of it. And
well, what I mean by map it is, are they going to take her sketch and actually locate it with actual stars in the sky?
But there's theories. There's a lot of theories. All the astronomers want to argue about that. Okay. But I forgot that I had.
You're making me sweat. You're making me sweat. I'm taking clothes off.
Fan yourself. But Barney died of a cerebral hemorrhage on February 25th, 1969 at the age of 46.
He basically had a stroke.
Yes. And at that point in time, now remember, Betty was much more willing to talk about her encounter. And after that, she was like, you know what? I'm going to fully embrace this. And I'm just going to become a celebrity of the UFO community. And she spoke publicly often about her experience. She does die of cancer October 17th, 2004. Cancer. Interesting. At age 85, never remarrying.
Oh.
I know. But here's the star map. Do you see this map? I'm going to see if I can blow it up for you.
You know, I like it bigger.
I know. Megan needs it bigger. And we can't really see.
Yeah, I like to consider myself an amateur astronomer from that one class I took in college, but mostly because, you know, I like my Greek stuff and a lot of them are named after Greek mythological things. So I'm looking at this thing and these stars trying to see if they look, I don't know, it looks a little bit like the constellation Cassiopeia, to be honest.
But do you see where he's saying these, and I'll post this picture for you guys, but these are the trade routes because they're the full lines. And then here's all these little dotted lines. And
where's the sun?
Where's
the Earth and the sun?
Okay, this is what I want you to know. 1968, Marjorie Fish of Oak Harbor, Ohio, read John Fuller's book, The Interrupted Journey, where her sketch is of the stars. Okay.
Yes.
Was published, and she was an elementary school teacher and an amateur astronomer, as you just dubbed yourself,
Mrs. Fish.
And she was very intrigued by this starfish. You just her last name is Fish.
That is fucking fantastic. Who accidentally just says starfish? It's like you've developed Tourette's.
In my defense, look at my next line. Intrigued by the star map, Fish wondered if it might be deciphered.
Starfish. Just shorten it. Make your own.
Starfish now. So what she operates, Megan, from the assumption that this large star right here is the sun. Okay. And so this is what she bases all of her research and whatnot on, assuming that this is the sun and then going from there.
I think she's wrong.
Well, you're not the only one.
I think that's stupid.
Yes. So another analyst by the name of, let's see. Oh, she sent her theory to this analyst Webb. Okay, a Dr. Webb. And Webb was like, I agree with your conclusions. So then he sends the map to Terence Dickinson, an editor of the magazine Astronomy. Now, Dickinson did not endorse Fish and Webb's conclusion, but the first time in the journal's history, Astronomy, meaning the publication.
Yes, the magazine.
Invited comments and debate on the UFO report, starting with an opening article in the December 1974 issue. And for about a year afterward, the opinion page of Astronomy carried arguments for and against Fish's star map.
I dig
so it kind of got, yeah.
Yeah, that just doesn't make sense to me because she's picking the biggest star at the start of this trade route to be the sun when they've obviously gone off course in some way, shape, or form, if we're considering this is real. Listen to how I'm talking right now.
Well, I told you to operate with me in the basis that this is reality.
But when you show people the picture, when you show people the picture, they're going to pick one of those dotted lines and go, yeah, that's obviously Earth.
Yeah, right. Most definitely. And I'm sorry, but why? What are we trading on the sun? Coolant?
Well, I'm wondering if perhaps they're doing the star maps because the sun obviously is a star and it's not showing their planetary stops on the way. So these are all different, maybe solar systems.
Oh, okay. I like that theory. They could be entire systems.
And it's just, and if you're going to take this, what I also don't like about Fish is if you're going to take this and say, oh, it must be the biggest one. The sun is not that big of a star.
I was going to point that out too.
No, we're a yellow star. We're medium range maybe. With not as much gravitational pull as one of those little tiny ones. It doesn't make sense to me.
She's also operating under the assumption that this map that this alien being pulled down to point out all she asked, all that Betty had asked is, where are you from? We don't know what fucking universe this is in. He just pulls down a map and a hologram.
Oh my God, he Michiganed them.
He pulled up
He held up his right hand and he pointed to the middle of his palm and said, I'm from here.
Exactly. There is nothing that says this is from our universe.
Word.
So that in itself was problematic for me. Now, I'm going to get into the rebuttals because I know these are things.
Love me a good rebuttal.
You do. And there were plenty of them. So psychiatrists later suggest that the supposed abduction was a hallucination brought on by the stress of being an interracial couple in the 1960s in the United States.
I don't like that one.
Betty and Barney really hated this suggestion because their relationship was extremely happy. And furthermore, it caused absolutely no turmoil amongst their friends and family. They're like, okay, this might have been what the United States was fighting about in 1960, but this is not what our family and the way we lived
Barney
had
and
an
Betty
issue with.
are like middle class, like good at jobs in the fucking East Coast that just took themselves an impromptu, spontaneous trip through Canada, Niagara, wherever. I'm assuming they went to Canada.
They did.
I mean, come on, don't pull that bullshit with them or minimize the story based off of an interracial tension.
Nope, because like I said, that might have been what was going on in the news
But
at
not
the
with
time,
them.
but it's not. It was not with them.
Were they public? You said they were outspoken about the fact
Yeah,
that
they
they're
were.
like, no.
They were very upset about that. Now, Jim McDonald, a resident of the area in which the Hills claimed to have been abducted,
Oh, I'm intrigued.
has produced a detailed analysis of their journey, which concludes that the episode was provoked by their misperceiving an aircraft warning beacon on Cannon Mountain as a UFO.
Ooh, I like this.
He notes that the road the Hills took, the beacon appears and disappears at exactly the same time the Hills describe the UFO as appearing and disappearing. The remainder of the experience is ascribed to stress, sleep deprivation, and false memories that were, quote, recovered under hypnosis. After reading McDonald's recreation, UFO expert Robert Schaefer writes that the Hills are the poster children for not driving when sleep deprived.
And I agree with a lot of that. And sleep deprivation can do crazy things to you. I've been there.
And remember, I told you at 10 p.m., they were in a diner drinking coffee to stay awake and push themselves through the rest of the night to get home. So, and presumably so, they spent these 3 nights honeymooning. They were probably staying up late, bumping uglies, then getting up early to tour the area, the falls, and all that stuff. So they probably are. Plus, they're overworked. She's a CPS worker. He's a night working postal worker. God,
I don't know. I believe that the sleep deprivation can cause that type of a thing, but both of them at the same time.
that is where I struggle. I also
and
struggle.
at 10 p.m., Charnell? Or does this happen more about 2 a.m.?
It happened at 10:30 p.m. is when the abduction happened.
Are you really sleep deprived 30 minutes after stopping for coffee at a diner, girlfriend? Because I wouldn't be.
No, and to that extreme, to where you're hallucinating, no. And I'm always going to go back. Good point.
What was it? Were they
fuck.
drugged? Were they drugged?
Hey, you know what? That's actually a theory that has not come up in the research, but that is a damn good theory.
And nobody took any chemical time. Like, I'm not saying they were drug users,
they didn't,
but were
no.
they drugged?
But also think of this too. When we were just talking about
a black woman and a
thank
white
you.
man in a diner at 10:30 at night.
Yes.
And was there.
And people having
There you go.
issues with interracial couples at the time.
See, now the thing that I said
That's
was
a
a
good
bunch
theory.
of bullshit. But it's because of just the chemical attributes. Could they have been? But even then, just because you are drugged, Charnell, doesn't mean that you're going to have the same experience as the person that you're with.
And that's what I was just going to say. But also, I still fall back on why did they have separate, like their memories when they were together are the same, but then they both remember being separated and having different experiences
Similar
that were
yet
similar.
different.
Yes, they were similar in nature in that of being examined and whatnot. So I do fall back on that as well, that there were notable differences. There's notable differences where we can say Betty clearly communicated more, was more open to communicate with these beings, right?
Right.
And had a better experience than Barney did. He was terrified. He kept his eyes closed most of the times. It almost seemed like, they told him to close his eyes. So it almost seems like they could tell he was petrified. And so it was like a calming, like, okay,
Charnell,
then close your eyes.
Men are very sensitive creatures when their junk gets messed with.
Very true. Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody suctioned cup Big Jim and the twins and then stuck something up a starfish.
That's true. That did without consent.
No, correct.
Yeah,
He was
very
raped. He was
traumatizing.
sodomized
He was.
by aliens, and she doesn't report anything. Hey, you mentioned earlier that we later learned this was a pregnancy test.
Yes.
How did that come up during hypnosis?
In hypnosis, yeah. The leader being had just told her. She asked what that was for,
'Cause it hurt
why they did that.
But he took the pain away.
And he, took the pain away. But he said that she said in hypnosis that it was a pregnancy test. Yeah.
Did they ever have children?
No. Not that is reported. No, okay. I do not believe that they did.
That is interesting too.
And what happens essentially to Betty is she becomes more and more vocal as, in a time through the 80s, through the 90s, where we're no longer really willing to accept that these things happened. And so she just gets kind of chalked up as being like a crackpot, essentially, But I don't know. I think that they had very real experiences. Oh, another theory is that this one dude came forward and was like, listen, just so you know, there was a television show that released in the 1950s, and it seems very similar to this account, and we think that this is where it came from. And the
they Hills filled their heads with some television show instead.
And the Hills are like, no, I've not seen that show, but nice try. And I mean, and truly, there were differences too between their experience and what that is. But this is a heavy time where UFO encounters are being reported, right? So there are some things that our brain might fill in. I mean, Betty herself had said her sister thought that she saw a flying saucer.
And now for all of your conspiracy theory enjoyments, I will put out the possible fact that this was a U.S. government related type of experiment with a new aircraft. They were taken, experimented upon by people from our own government and set forth to be part of an experiment. And there you all go. For all of the crazies, someone had to say it.
Right. No, I have that written in the notes.
Okay, good. Because I feel better now.
It's like then...
Like I said, we're from the government. We're here to help.
Then all of a sudden this stuff just stops. I feel like the government was done with their experiment. They're like, oh, hey, we got people to believe in aliens. Cool.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, look, they've started organizations.
Yeah. It could be an experiment on humans.
We know this new amnesiac works great. Let's use this for surgeries.
Yeah.
As they hand me my Versed. I wake up later going, that was wonderful.
That was great. Can I have some more?
Yes.
Yep. So there it is. There's the story. There's also, just so you guys know, I mean, I put some pop culture stuff in here. The old TV series, The Outer Limits.
Yeah, I remember The Outer Limits.
So that was released. I mean, it went on for a while, but there was an episode of Outer Limits that talked about the Bolero Shield. Okay. And that was released February 22nd, 1964. Oh, I'm sorry. No. That was released February 10th, 1964. And Barney underwent his first hypnosis February 22nd, 1964. So only 12 days separated the two incidences, talking about the Bolero Shield, which was it was described as like a wraparound eyes abduction. Okay, so like alien beings that had eyes that like wrapped all the way around their head.
Oh, the little green men with the eyes around their head. Yeah. This is the aliens from the Toy Story movies.
Yeah, kind of like that, like those. But yes, and so one person pulled at that thread and said, with as much as Barney talked about eyes and those eyes and all of that thing, they think it came from this broadcast that happened just 12 days before. However, I mean, that was 1964. Their encounter happened in 1961. Betty had wrote down her dreams in November, and the descriptions a month and a half. Yeah. So we can't kind of go there either. I don't know. It was just a thread.
This is not something for us to solve anyway. This is just a good Shocktober case. I dig.
I will post this too, but here's their drawing. Here's their drawing. Do you see that? You see all those little people there's a red light on the side. They said this is how
the wings coming up there in the next picture?
Yep. Those are the wings.
It looks like a flying whopper.
It does. Well,
no, it looks like
Barney said it reminded him of a pancake.
Okay. Like a stuffed pancake. Mm-hmm. Stuffed with aliens.
Look at the little people in there, though. I mean, that's cute. It's a very primitive drawing. I could draw this.
I could draw this also.
Yeah. So it said this is how it looked when it was about 200 feet high. And then this is how it looked after shifting over the highway, descending to about 100 feet over the field.
It had its wings out to hover.
It did. It's hover wings. So I'm going to post those. Very interesting, right? Do you like that?
You shocked me with this case. There was a point where all of a sudden it dawned. I'm like, you bitch. You're giving me an alien abduction.
Yes.
You tricked me.
I love not telling you ahead of time what we're doing.
Good,
it's the best. Do you want, though, a brain bath?
Yeah, bathe
Even
me.
though
Are you
this
going to bathe
was
me with
fun.
aliens or are you going to bathe me
No.
with something else? Okay.
No. This was sent. I'm going to bathe you with a listener brain bath.
I love
These are
listener
my
brain
favorites.
baths.
You guys, email us with brain bath in the subject, title it crimecuriousyahoo.com. And if you have a funny story, we will read it on air and we will not use your names if you don't want. But actually, this was sent by Erica and she said, I don't fucking care if you use my name because it is hilarious. And it's a piggyback off from a previous brain bath that we used that sparked her memory.
All right.
Okay, so
I like this too. Which brain bath was it?
Do you remember the jellyfish in the wetsuit?
Yes,
brain
I
bath?
do. Very well.
That was the trigger. She starts it with, oh my God, I love the new shows. And I loved Megan and Jason's story about shitting in the box. It had me hyperventilating. Anywho, on the Ashton Hall brain bath with the jellyfish, I have a story. My father is a commercial fisherman, so clearly we are used to roughing it. My best friend, Laura, is a Pennsylvania Yankee bitch. Love it.
That's fantastic.
So she came to visit, and my dad said he was taking us on the boat to pull crab pots. She was fascinated. She and my father partake in the devil's lettuce and natty lights, and she states that she has
Natty
to pee.
daddies and devil's lettuce.
Yes! Sounds like a great day.
Good choices get made after that, people.
Oh, yeah. And all of a sudden, she has to pee. The boat has no bathroom. She asks me what to do. My father says, hang your ass over the railing.
Amen, daddy.
Yep. So
That's exactly what you do.
it is. So basically, pee over the side of the boat. She was stoned, buzzed, and could hold it no longer. So my father and I turned the opposite direction to give her a little privacy. A little while later, I see the look of horror on her face and uncomfortable shifting. She looks at me, terrified, and says, what is this? I'm like, huh? She's like, my ass and vag are itchy and on fire. I asked her where she had sat. She points to it directly, and Dad pulls the crab pots up. Now, a lot of jellyfish get caught up in those
Crab pots.
crab pots. Yep. My dad realizes what is going on and is laughing hysterically. She had sat on remnants of jellyfish while relieving herself. Being a Yankee, she had never been stung by a jellyfish and thought she was going to die.
I'm allergic to them.
My dad, this would be so bad for you.
Yes.
My dad gave her some ice and water.
She iced her badge while she's, oh my God.
And
How embarrassing.
And she said my dad gave her some ice and water, and we had to again give her some privacy while she iced her vag. This is my favorite story ever. I've seen my dad cry 2 times, and this was one of them, of laughter.
Oh, what a bad day. That's so
here
funny.
She is partaking in some of the devil's lettuce and
Well, I mean, when you hang your ass off the boat, I mean, did she really dip that bitch right into the water then?
well, she's probably off the end of it, off the ladder, whatever, and she's just sitting like right by the crab pots where
She wasn't making good
they're
choices.
dangling, and probably didn't realize those were the remnants of jellyfish, which, by the way, still have poisonous barbs.
Yeah. That's how I learned I was allergic, was a Portuguese man-o-war that was obviously dead on the
dead
beach,
one.
but its tentacle got wrapped around my ankle. And
Yeah.
stung like a bitch, and I swelled up just like I got stung by a bee.
Yeah, it can be bad, but
Oh, that
so
is
I'm
a
glad
great story.
Hopefully, her vag and ass have recovered since then.
And she probably hasn't seen her friend's dad since, because I don't think I could show my face.
Not after you
Every
eat.
time you walk in, they're like, hey, how's the pussy?
Right. Want a natty light? A joint?
Yes, I do.
Also, I feel like when your friend's father has to make an ice pack for your vag, you're on a different level of friendship at that point in time. And he's
probably
like,
are.
here's cool off your puss, honey.
Right. Can I get you anything? A natty, some devil's lettuce, an ice pack.
Right.
That's great. What a good story.
Lord. Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and feel free to go to patreon.com/crimecurious.com if you'd like to binge more exclusive content, and also follow us on social media. Interact with us on social media. We like talking to you guys. We will respond.
I love
we promise.
responding. It's my favorite.
Yes. And we hope you keep it curious. And until next time, everybody,
Bye-bye.